Hi, I'm Bridget from Suburban Sandcastles, and I'm here with Dr Arne Rubinstein, an expert on adolescent development. And I don't know, why do I keep saying that?
Hello, I'm here with Bridget from Sandcastles, and she's going to say that I'm an expert on rites of passage and that for 30 years I've been working with teenagers and youth and young men and trying to see what we can do so that our young men can actually thrive and bring their gifts into the community.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much for having me at your beautiful property here today, Anna. And I think your work is so inspiring. There was a moment in your medical career, because obviously you trained as a doctor, where you really felt that something didn't fit and that you wanted to change your direction. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, look, I had quite a few sort of, pivotal moments, but the big thing for me was that I was seeing so many young kids, especially boys, who were so energetic and full of life and happy and, just fun to be with. And then I would see those same boys as teenagers or their older brothers, and they were sort of dark and they'd have their hoodies over their faces and they wouldn't answer questions, with more than one syllable, and they were basically looking for trouble and angry and finding trouble. And I just thought, there has to be something different. These young men are the men of the future, and we're failing them. And then when I look at the statistics, which are showing that in Australia, somewhere between 20 and 45% of 15 to 16-year-olds are on medication and or labelled with a disorder. That's just not right. It can't be right.
Yeah, it's just so strange to even get to that point where we're having to label them as something wrong. I mean, if there's such a vast group of children who are getting this label, then isn't it a reflection really on our society?
Completely. Of course it is. And, we have this expectation that, most of my work is with boys. I think it's just as relevant to girls, but, that every student is going to be able to sit there for 8 hours a day and take in the information that someone thinks they're supposed to learn. Whereas I actually believe that every single kid is different. Every single kid has their own gifts and talents, their spirit and genius, and our role should be to bring that out. The word education comes from educare, to lead out. And so rather than us trying to pack in the information we think they need, which is clearly not working, we actually need to be supporting them to find who they really are and what gifts they have to bring to our society.
That's such an important point too, and I think, I've got a 2-year-old, and you look at toddlers and they're so in themselves, they so single-mindedly pursuing their passions, and over time children subordinate to what they think that they're supposed to do. And I guess, how do we nurture that while still, living in modern life and having a modern family?
Well, what is one of the passions? What's one of the, things that you really see personality-wise in your 2-year-old?
He is just obsessed. He's such a boy's boy. He's obsessed with trucks and cars, and just we'll talk about them all day.
Yeah. All right, so machinery and things like that. So, you would hope that somewhere in his life he either finds some sort of work that deals with machinery, or a serious part of his hobby is with machinery. The problem happens when someone says, well, no, you can't be a truck driver because you won't earn enough money. You've got to be a doctor or a lawyer and sit inside at a desk all day. And then you end up with someone doing something because their parents told them or society told them, and they spend their whole lives doing what they don't love. So what do? They come home, they drink beers, they take drugs or whatever. Yeah, the reality is we need truck drivers, we need machinists, and who better to do it than someone who loves it?
Exactly.
There you go, we just worked it out.
Yeah.
And everybody loves something, and every role needs to be filled in society. So if we can actually match up the people who love things with the thing that they love to do, it would be amazing.
Imagine the kind of society we'd be living in if everyone was...
They'd be shining.
Yeah, doing it from a place of joy. I think that's really... It's a key, and it's so simple, isn't it? But yet we've lost sight of that because of the belief systems that we think we should be pursuing.
Well, look, my real interest is in rites of passage. And every Indigenous society and community, always, when our boys or girls reach puberty, they would have had a rite of passage for them. And there was a number of reasons, but one of the big reasons was to actually acknowledge and honour the gifts and talents, the genius and the spirit in each of the kids, and to say to them, we want you to be you, and that we want those gifts in our community.
You really explain that beautifully in your book, The Making of Men, and it really brought tears to my eyes to see that transition described for a child, for a boy who perhaps is shut down or is kind of really in a place of anxiety about who he is, and
Yeah.
to really be told, like, you are loved and you bring this to my life,
Yeah.
and I love the way you do X, you know.
Yeah, instead of loving them for who they are, which is the greatest gift you can give any person, is to actually love them for who they are. We have a situation where, you know, society is putting all this pressure that if you're not a certain way, and so for a boy, if you're not tough, good at sport, you know, a certain height, wear certain clothes, look a certain way, you know, there's something wrong with you. And so, yeah, the ones who are into slightly different things or whatever it is, there can be all this angst that they're getting one message that they're supposed to be a certain way, but they know that's not who they are. So what do? They go inside. And now we have technology, which just is sort of sitting there. It's the new drug.
Yeah.
And any kid who's got some social issues or doesn't feel accepted, what do? They go to their room and they get lost in technology and they live a virtual world. Every parent I'm talking to says that they're fighting a war with technology and they're losing. And, you know, especially for the kids who aren't sure about themselves. You know, if someone knows what they're passionate about, if they have a vision, if they're excited about life, they're not going to spend all day indoors on their computer. They have things they want to do. They're not going to want to do lots of drugs because, you know, I'm not going to do drugs. I've got, you know, I'm going to be someone.
Yeah.
But if they're lost, then all of these things become a real danger.
And I guess they're sitting there too, trying to work out who they are by looking at who everybody else is, which is, you know, looking outside of yourself for the answers to what's inside yourself.
That's right. So, you know, one of the beautiful things that we do in our work is we take a moment where we actually sit the boys or the girls in front of, you know, all the people who they've been on our programs with. But, you know, this is also something we can do at home and actually get parents and people who are close to them to tell them what they love about them. The gifts and talents, the genius, the spirit that they see in them. You know, it's like, and you see the kids grow. You see them, you know, you see them come out of themselves just by being acknowledged for who they are.
It's beautiful. It's such a beautiful concept, and I guess, you know, if it works so well elsewhere around the world, then why aren't we having that, you know, as a standard practice here? Yeah,
well, you know, unfortunately, it's not actually being done even in the Indigenous communities.
It's not anymore.
Hardly. And in Australia, where we have, for example, so many tragic situations in our Indigenous community, you can directly track the increase in things like petrol sniffing and alcohol and other issues with the loss of the rites of passage that they would have always created. Because the other thing about a rite of passage, it's bringing the young boy or girl into society as a young man or woman, at which time they get extra privileges, but they also get more responsibilities. And they actually have to start answering to society, and that's where mentors come in, and they become part of a community, and they have a role within that community, and they have to change from what I call child behaviour, or boy behaviour for boys, into healthy young adult or young man behaviour. So a child is, it's all about me, I'm the centre of the universe, I want attention, I want power, you know, I can't stand with my emotions. If something doesn't work, I have a temper tantrum, you know, and a boy wants a mother, you know, which is beautiful when you've got a 2-year-old or a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
But when you have a man who still wants attention, still wants to be the centre of the universe,
someone to clean up after them,
still wants a mother, you know, it doesn't work, and doesn't take responsibility for their actions, more importantly. And we need to be creating that shift. And because we're not, I actually believe we're in a society that's being run by boys and is destroying the beautiful planet that we have, and you know, a lot of things are just, when you look at them, they're ridiculous.
Well, and it's that instant gratification style behaviour.
That's child behaviour, rather than thinking ahead and thinking how what I'm doing is going to affect other people and also into the future.
Wow, it's powerful stuff. And how are you finding the retreats that you're running and this concept of rites of passage, how are you finding that those boys and those relationships are changing with their fathers or their other significant people in their lives? Oh,
look, it just changes immeasurably. I mean, first of all, often when the boys and their dads arrive, they'll get there and they're sort of just sitting like, you know, they've got their backs to each other. You can tell that they want to, you know, sort of, they want to communicate, but they kind of don't know how, and it can be quite awkward. And then after they've spent time and the boys get to hear the stories of their fathers and other men, and they do challenges and they get honoured, and then at the end of the camp, you know, you'll see a boy and you just just have his arm on his dad's shoulder, or they'll just be, there's just that little bit of touch, or just their body language change, and it's beautiful. But also at home, and I get the most amazing emails from mothers telling me how, it changes their sons' lives. Their sons leave, they can be in terrible situations and full of, anger or angst or depression or whatever. And, it affects them. But the rite of passage is not the end, because then we actually need a community who's supporting them. And ideally, someone goes through a rite of passage into a community. So we have a lot of work to do.
And I think it's also about, it's not just that nuclear family dynamic, it's the people around the child, the uncles, the other significant.
Yeah.
Because sometimes children, especially boys, I suppose, aren't comfortable to have certain conversations with their parents. So it's about having somebody else that they can trust.
That's right. That's the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And the theory would be, one day your son, if he can't talk to you or his father, that he can talk to me.
Yeah.
And if my son can't talk to me, that there are other good men he can talk to, rather than going to the other kids his age or the internet. They need to know that what they're seeing on the internet is not real.
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting their sex education now from porn. They actually are believing it's real.
And that's really influencing the kinds of dynamics in relationships.
Completely.
And the attitude that they're taking towards women.
Completely. And women are seeing it as well and thinking that's the way they're supposed to be. And we've just seen in the newspapers recently, that they're 12-year-old girls presenting to their doctors with injuries from rough sex.
Wow.
Because they're copying what they're seeing on the internet.
Gosh, it's so troubling, isn't it? And I guess, again, it just further reinforces that disconnection with ourselves. Again, we're looking at how we should be as opposed to how we are and who we are inside.
Yeah, and our children need to be able to have conversations with us about these things, or they work out their own belief systems as a result of unreal stuff that they're being exposed to.
I think it's also too, I don't know if you feel this, it's about changing the conversation within a family too, about being more open to talking about some of these things. Sometimes a lot of parents are raised to not talk about sex or not talk about, those big changes that happen to their kids' bodies, but if you're not talking about it with them, then they're going to go and get that information that might be distorted or...
Yeah, I mean, one of our basic principles in our work is that we don't tell the kids how to live their lives, but we share stories. So, boys are hungry for knowledge, as are girls, and when they hear from parents and other adults how it was for them at 13, 14, 15, what was happening to their bodies, how they felt in, dating situations, how awkward or not it was, that's when they actually learn, and that's when they actually really listen. And it's very powerful, the whole story thing.
And I guess there's a sense of respect, I suppose, that comes from those conversations, because children can then see their parents as people, not just parents.
That's right. And look, I've talked to thousands of parents in Australia and all over the world, and I say, what sort of relationship do you want to have with your child when they're older? And the most common thing I hear is that, we want them to want to spend time with us and to be involved. And I say, if that's going to happen, there has to be a shift from I'm the parent, you're the child, to more, you're still a parent, but we can't keep telling them what to do once they become teenagers. We're not going to know everything that's happening in their lives. If they muck up, it's not okay to shame them. We actually need to start working with them and supporting them and teaching them to actually make healthy, wise decisions, and if they don't, how to deal with the consequences. The reality is children are going to muck up. And the best time for them to muck up is when they're at home and teenagers and learning, as opposed to waiting until they get out in the world and then things happen.
I guess a confronting thing around that is that often it means dealing with your own stuff, which can be difficult. Children are mirrors, and they often press the buttons and press in us the things that we haven't healed in ourselves.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying for a moment it's not difficult, but the flip side is if we try and put on this facade that we've got it all worked out and we know, and not actually sharing, the danger is we actually lose our children emotionally, and they just, they go. And, I know that parents don't want that. I always say, if my son...
Come here.
Here we go. Here's a little one.
Hugo, up here with Mummy. Speaking of little ones.
Yes. Hello, Hugo. Can you give me 5 again? No. Oh. You know, I always say if my son, you know, who's now 23, I've got two, 23 and 25, if they really get in trouble, I want them to know that they can come to me. I really want them to know that. Not that they're going to go, you know, not that they're going to be isolated or in, you know, not deal with the situation. And we need to start them feeling safe about that when they're young.
Yeah, absolutely. We might have to call it there, since of course we've got a toddler who, speaking of boy psychology, is really wanting something. So thank you so much for your time today, Arne. I really appreciate
Absolute pleasure.
having us in your beautiful space and sharing your important work with us.
Pleasure.